Hi, my name is Ewan McGaughey, Senior Lecturer in Law, Specialist in Labour Rights, and I want to talk to you about fair wages and collective bargaining and what the different parties in this election are proposing to do in their manifestos. Firstly, about this big issue, which is that we've had the longest pay cut in modern history since the Industrial Revolution and escalating inequality. So I'm going to look at the Labour Party, Conservative Party, Liberal Democrats, Brexit Party and Green Party manifestos on this issue. So first thing is that this is the median wage in the UK from 1997 up till today, the median weekly wage that is, so you can see it was rising and rising and rising under the Labour government until we got to the financial crisis, the banker-led crash, banks like Goldman Sachs and Northern Rock and Royal Bank of Scotland tanking the economy. And then we got a wage decline, which was accelerated when the Conservative and Liberal Democrat coalition came into power in 2010. So the wage decline then was even worse than the financial crisis. We've had the longest wage cut in modern history since the Industrial Revolution. And so what are the parties going to do about that? Because we're still not back up to the level that we were in 2008. Now we also know that if we have more collective voice in the workplace, then we have fairer wages. So what this chart shows is in the red line UK union membership over the 20th century from 1900 till 2010. And it shows in the blue dotted line inequality measured by how much income the top 1% of earners get. And basically what we see, particularly over the post-war period, is that as union membership goes up and unions are bargaining for fair wages, inequality goes down. And when Margaret Thatcher comes into power in 1979, she attacks the unions and there is a corresponding rise in income inequality. Okay, so what are the party manifestos going to say about those problems to get fair wages through collective bargaining? So what do the party manifestos say about fair wages and collective bargaining to respond to the longest wage cut in modern history and escalating inequality? So first of all, let's look at the Labour Party manifesto, which is called It's Time for Real Change. And if we turn to page 59, in their chapter on work, we see two main things that Labour Party is proposing. First of all, it wants to introduce a Ministry for Employment Rights, which according to Labour, quote, will transform people's lives for the better through the biggest extension of workers' rights in history. And that includes in introducing 1 million new jobs, which are particularly going to be targeted at getting a green industrial revolution, clean air and a zero carbon economy at fair wages. That'll bring us pretty close to full employment because there's roughly 1.3, 1.4 million people unemployed at the moment. And it also wants a £10 minimum wage. But then the second thing that Labour wants to do, not just for people on the minimum wage, is to get fair wages through sectoral collective bargaining. And so what that means is that trade unions and employers will negotiate fair pay scales for everybody according to sector, whether you're working in health or education or transport or services or finance. There will be fair wage scales that everybody can rely upon. And that would indeed be the biggest extension of workers' rights in modern history. So what about the Conservative Party's manifesto? What to do to get fair wages and, if anything, on collective agreements? So here is the Tory manifesto. There's Mr. Johnson saying, get Brexit done. There's only really one thing in this manifesto about fair wages, if anything, and it's repeated a couple of times. On page 14 they say, quote, we have raised the minimum wage significantly and introduced and consistently raised the national living wage. Of course, the national living wage is just the renamed minimum wage. But that's actually not true. So since 2010, the minimum wage actually stagnated or fell in real terms. So here's 2010. The different lines show different age groups. So this is young people and apprentices. Here is 18 to 21-year-olds or 18 to 20-year-olds, and here is people over 25. And as you can see, it was only in the very last year that people over the age of 25 got any real increase in the minimum wage. So it's just a lie to say that there has been consistent raising of the minimum wage under the Conservative government. On the contrary, it's been cut. And there's nothing in their manifesto about what to do for fair wages and getting collective agreements to deliver fair wage scales. What about the Liberal Democrats? So in their manifesto, again, there's not very much. On page 24, we have the one main thing. It says, quote, that they want to establish an independent review to consult on how to set a genuine living wage across all sectors. So the Liberal Democrats don't know what they want to do. They want to ask other people what to do should they get back into government. They say they will pay this living wage in all central government departments. That can't be right, because that would be a significant pay cut down to the minimum living wage. So presumably they mean that they want to pay that as a minimum, and also to contractors. There is nothing in here about how to get fair wages back to the level before 2010, when the Liberal Democrats got into power in the coalition. Then there's the Brexit Party, and here is Nigel Farage, although he's not running as MP, on the front, sort of trying to look tough. He's not wearing his pinstripe suit in this photo. There's only really one thing that the Brexit Party says about wages, and that's on page 16. It says that they want to, quote, reduce annual immigration and address wage stagnation. So that, of course, feeds into their narrative that if you cut the number of immigrants coming into the country, maybe like if you cut the birth rate, then the labour market is going to be tighter, and that means that wages are going to go up. That's an empirically false claim. It is employers that cut wages, not workers or migrants who are also looking for good paid jobs, or it's the government that cuts wages through failing to enforce fair wage policies or attacking labour rights. So all the Brexit Party is offering, as usual, is racism and lies. Then there's the Green Party, last of all. Their manifesto is called If Not Now, Then When, which might seem like a good question. There's really only one major thing in the Green Party's manifesto, which is to introduce a universal basic income. So that's like a social security program without any gaps that covers everyone, and to raise the living wage to £12 an hour. But both of those policies are about the bare minimum amount that people should be paid. £12 an hour is higher than Labour's £10 an hour, but the Green Party has nothing for getting fair wage scales or in sectoral collective agreements. It does say on page 40 that it wants to revive the role of democratic trade unions, but it doesn't say how it wants to do that. So if you want fair wages and good collective agreements, it's actually only the Labour Party that is offering a genuine alternative.